I try and avoid you late at night because you always you're very cruel to me when I decide it's time for bed.
Hello and welcome to show number 8 of my little podcast called TWUMBLE. And as you might hear, again, an English episode with my guest, Keir Whitaker. Yeah, welcome, Keir, to my little German podcast. You know that it will be recorded in German, yes?
Yes, I'm looking forward to the translation.
Okay.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm just back from a longer trip to first Cologne, Brighton, then Freiburg for Smashing Conference, and then to Bologna where I gave a talk. One of the few talks I give during a year. I mean, not a day.
Yeah, it's not like you to be at a conference, though, Mark. I don't think our paths have ever crossed at any other conference ever.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually recently met in Brighton again, right? But the funny thing is really at conferences sometimes we don't even hang out a lot, right? Like there's like conferences, I remember New York, for example, where you have been at Smashing Conf. That was one where we had more time that we spent together. But in Brighton, for example, I haven't seen you a lot, to be honest.
No, this is true because I try and avoid you late at night because you always you're very cruel to me when I decide it's time for bed. You know, these weary bones can't take your pace, Mark.
I'm always very polite, going like just playing this. Come on, come in, just one more drink.
I think your definition of politeness is slightly different to mine, but I've learned to live with it. It's all good.
Okay, so before we start, to talk about your work and what you're doing, I thought about where we met for the first time. Do you remember this? I actually don't.
I do. Yeah, it was at Brooklyn Beta or
was
Beta.
Was it really in Brooklyn?
Yeah, we. I think we'd been in touch through one of the projects that I was doing at the time with Elliot. And,
oh yes, true.
I think you kindly offered to take some photos, which was amazing. And I know that your paths had crossed with Elliot before, but we'd never met in person, I don't think. Maybe I'd seen you at an event. And then I think it was during one of the lunch breaks in Brooklyn at the Invisible Dog. I recognised the hair. And so I thought, that's got to be Mark. And then, then I think we chatted there and you were sort of had the camera strapped on and were taking photos. And
exactly.
I think that was probably 5 years ago, maybe.
Must be. Let me think. 2012, I think it was.
Really?
Yeah, it must be.
So so getting on a bit, but and I think then obviously we hit it off and got a lot of mutual friends and acquaintances, and you've been taking pictures of me attempting to do work at conferences ever since.
So you just mentioned your work with Elliot. That was before Shopify, right? So. What actually did you do there? I mean, you did quite some stuff like books and magazines, and was that like something where you went, where you've been freelance and tried to do a business together with Elliot, or was that already a side project and you were working on other stuff usually?
Yeah, so I think we both had other things going on when we started that, but I'm thinking back, was 2011 maybe. Just had a bunch of ideas, and he'd recently moved down to a similar part of the country that I was living in, and we worked together briefly at a different company a few years before. But we just had this idea to run a small kind of event series called Insights, spelt INSITES, a pun on website, which was kind of similar to this in a way. It's kind of getting the stories of people who we had the privilege to meet over the years, and we're doing interesting things in the industry. And I think, certainly speaking for myself, we'd always wanted to go on tour, never quite made the rock star thing work, more of a dream. So we decided to do these sort of 4 evening events in 4 days, and we called it a tour. And I think we did Brighton, London, Manchester, and Bristol from Monday to Thursday. And then on the back of that, we thought about turning it into a book. So we managed to get some sponsorship together, and Elliot did an amazing job on the design and packaging, and we sort of edited the interviews down. And we published that with the help of 21 sponsors. We had each chapter had a supporter, and then MailChimp helped overall. And yeah, we pushed that out probably like 4 years ago now, even. It was. I think we sold around 2,000 copies of this weighed a kilogram.
Yeah,
and so
I have it here.
We got really into the finery of shipping books around the world and different ways of doing that. And on the back of that, we did some workshops and some other bits and bobs. But I think like most things, lots of collaborations have a natural lifespan, and he's gone on to do different things. And then I moved more and full-time at my role at Shopify now for the last sort of probably full-time for about 3 years. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the events. So you, like I do, you organized events for people. So all the pitfalls to avoid and stuff, and how to like attract sponsors and stuff, right? So for me, it's interesting to see that you, from the one side, like jumped on the other side. Let's say it this way, and now you're more or less like one of the sponsors that you see at many events, like with Shopify, and you're responsible for that.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say I know all the pitfalls. I think I've muddled through on organizing events. I would never be one to say, oh, how hard can it be? Because I know how hard it can be. And I've had the privilege of talking to people like yourself and John and Kat, who I work with now. And, there is a huge amount that goes into putting on, 48 hours of conference. So I wouldn't say I've probably touched the surface in getting things wrong, and I've had a few successes, but by no means an expert. But yeah, you're right. I have kind of gone to the other side, and I think it is interesting because I get pitched to a lot in my role at Shopify, which is working on partner growth, which is basically how do we attract more people to work, more designers, more developers to work with the platform principally for their clients, right? So I'll always try and persuade you, Mark, to design a store for someone else as opposed to open your own in many ways. But often the two come together. But yeah, you're right. I now get pitched a lot. And as you know, we have negotiations on an annual basis. And it's how can we both get the value from each other, really. And I'm always looking for new and exciting ways that we can natively bring Shopify and the Shopify Partner Program, which is our work on, into events. I think I've seen a lot of people do sponsorships in a not very exciting way, not very innovative way, and maybe there's not too much room for innovation, but I always think there's ways that you can ingratiate yourself with a very responsive audience like you have at Beyond Tellerrand, one of the greatest crowds that there is, especially as it's held in Germany. All the talks are in English. We're a Canadian company, and so it's great to be able to not just kind of give out T-shirts or do things. So you and I have many conversations about how we can do this and how
absolutely,
we can work together.
Yeah, I mean, having an events background and like also with the books, you yourself approach people to sponsor your stuff, right? To be a partner and team up with you to give you A, money, or B, support for in any way, like broadcasting that the book is available or whatever sponsorship could mean. So talking about this and seeing you now in the role of like being approached by people who run events or who want their stuff to be sponsored by Shopify, what do you think is like one of the key benefits? You just mentioned like it's a together. It's something where both parties should like benefit from each other. But surely there's events, without mentioning any names, where you get approached by someone just asking for money, and you say like, no, that's too much, and then you don't hear from them anymore. Is there anything that where you directly from the wording in an email would say like, I don't even write back, or would you always answer like for the first time? Because I can imagine like some people are really like let's say simple in the way they approach you, right?
I think it's just to say I always write back. I think that's one of the things that I would and there's someone listening to this and say they pitched me on something and I didn't write back. I always intend to or try to. Let's be honest. But I think there's a lack of understanding sometimes in how the relationship can work. You know, it's you often just get approached by people with these kind of telephone number figures, and you know my rant about don't pitch me tweets and things like that. You know, the base level will have, you know, one tweet from our Twitter account. And I'm like, you know, you've got 200 followers. It's it's that's not going to help me. What I want is to be able to talk to your audience in a nice way. So, and often you'll get back with people like that, and they, you know, they have the opportunity to do something. You have to go up through the tiers, and I'm like, well, you know, now it becomes a bit prohibitive because there are a lot of events out there, and so you have a sort of criteria, I think. But also, I think for me, it's how amenable is the person who's approaching me. You know, is if you go back with an idea and it's a no straight away, then or maybe, and sometimes the timing's bad. Maybe we've just been to that city, or you know, we have a regular partnership that we do in that city, and it wouldn't make sense for us to sponsor something 6 weeks before or after, you know.
Yeah. So
I think a lot of it
is there some kind of like hard facts where you measure like not only like personality, if you like someone or not, but also like where you go really like through your agenda and say like, okay, this city, let's say in London, is pretty close to Brighton, and we just sponsored someone in Brighton, and topic is this. So we had this topic covered like last week. Now we want to approach like a different target group. So is that like some catalog that you go through when you organize that, or is it like all more or less like inner feeling, like your inner gut that says like, oh, that's a good event, or no, that's not a good event?
I think it's a mixture of both, to be honest. I think my paymasters would like me to say it's a very scientific approach, but I think it's both. I think you know, years on the planet and having been to a lot of events, you get a good feeling for what is a good event. You get a good feeling for the kind of speakers that they attract, the kind of topics that are being presented at events, and also the demographic of the audience. Whilst I think the people that we target to try and become interested in Shopify as a platform for their client projects is changing. For example, you know, we now have a lot more bigger agencies who are coming on board. A lot of the people who've had a lot of success with the platform because it's very easy to get up and running, and the themes are, you know, if you know the basics of HTML and CSS, you're well on your way to being able to offer e-commerce as a solution to your clients with Shopify. Yeah, freelancers, very small, 1 or 2 people companies have often been, for want of a better phrase, you know, the mainstay of our partner program. And so going to those places where these people hang out, or you know, maybe they come one year and the next year you meet them again and they've partnered up with someone they met there. You know, they're kind of on the growth path, and it's also around the topics. You know, fundamentally, you need those front end skills. You need that kind of design thinking to succeed with kind of, you know, e-commerce, and Shopify enables that. But yeah, so those kind of big events where it's maybe a bit more kind of futurist thinking might not necessarily be on the top of my agenda. The more practical ones, the ones that I know from talking to the organizers or from feedback from people that have been, you know, kind of catered to a similar audience that the ones that I target. But we do some sort of outlier events, like John's event. You know, John Davey, who we obviously both know well, he has quite a lot of that kind of content, but then he also has more, for want of a better phrase, kind of those inspirational talks, those ones where you come away feeling pumped up, you know, Gavin Strange, Mr. Bingo, et cetera, that you come away, and you don't have to be interested in design or front end to get a lot from those. So you get a nice mix, and you do that with your evening sessions too. You know, so it's not a hard and fast rule.
Sure. So if you say practical events, could you imagine then, like, or is it, from my understanding, something where you also would be interested in going, whatever, like a shirt printing convention, or like a comic convention where actually people might sell their stuff as well, right? Like comic books or shirts or stuff like this. Or is it only like, because right now, like from maybe it's my limited view on things, but from what I see, Shopify often is like connected to like the web audience and the web people building websites and stuff. But what about like the people who actually need a shop in the internet and don't have like any skills like to do their website and stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think we do have crossover. You know, a lot of people who come up to the stand or come to one of our lunchtime sessions that we do, like with yourself or Reasons to, we'll have questions directly relating to their own store. There's a crossover, right? There's a lot of creative talent out there, people who are brilliant in the web space, doing amazing things, but they maybe have a sideline in selling shirts. Or the guys at Jolie are a great example. Harold has 4 apps in the App Store, but half of his job is running the store for the beautiful leather products that they create, their iPhone cases and things like that. So there are these people who are putting the skills to both sides of it. But to put it simply, we have a whole kind of different part of the company that caters to what we call merchants, people who maybe open up a store. And so if you think of the Venn diagram with the circles, there's always going to be a bit that overlaps in the middle. But, for me, it's always like, I really want to teach you how to build stores so you can go out and offer e-commerce to your client base. Whereas my colleagues on the merchant team are very much like, you've got a great product, or do you have a product? Let's help you bring it to market through online or in person, or, on the go, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like, for me, it's really interesting because, like, again, like from my point of view, like running events, like it's always interesting to tick on someone's mind who's like actually responsible for choosing events, because that also gives me information on like, okay, what do people want from my event, right? Because what I think is what you said as well is like, it's a partnership. So I want something from you, and in return you want something from me, and if we benefit both from each other, then it's like the perfect match, right? And therefore, in a long-term relationship, you can do more and different things, and there's like some kind of trust that you build up on each other, where you trust that whatever we do together, that will in the end work out. And if not, we can also be honest about it and say like, oh, that didn't work so well. That's like the best case in terms of a relationship between a conference organizer or an event organizer and someone sponsoring, right? But sometimes it is really hard for me to find out really what someone wants actually to get out of my event, because often it is like someone else saying yes to giving me some money for a sponsor package, and someone completely different who actually then comes to the event. Like it's like really hard to communicate then if there's like no straight connection, no ongoing connection between the first approach from me and the person in the end that is coming, to find out what actually do you want from me and how can we benefit from each other, right? So that's really interesting. That for us too, it works out really well, and sometimes it really needs a lot of time, and often I just hope that someone comes back and learns from the first time, where I have the feeling he or she didn't get as much out of the event as I wish they would, So, but then often the decision is like in the end numbers count sometimes, right? And the people go like, oh, how many signups to the newsletter did we have, or how many? So ways of measuring the success of being part of an event. So it's like really tricky.
Yeah, I think Shopify's big into metrics and data and measurement, as I'm sure most companies are. It's a big company now. It was under 100 people when I joined, and I think we're up to about 1,700 now. So it's all changed really since I joined 4 years ago when we started working together on some projects. But yeah, I think I take your point, and I think I really like to get to know the people whose events we sponsor. I have a thing for actually trying to be at the event. We have in the past done small level partnerships, maybe something for the bag. We've done these 2 books called Grow, that's sort of more business focused books. We're hopefully we'll do volume 3 and next year, and we've given those away, and we've put those in swag bags and things like that. But I don't think there's any substitute from actually talking to the people at an event, having that face-to-face.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It doesn't scale particularly well. If we wanted to do 100 events next year, it would be a problem because we don't have the boots on the ground, although the overall team is growing. But I just think you get a lot more. And so, in a sense, how many people you attract to the event is something we would consider. Is there a way we can get in front of your audience where they can opt into like we've done a pre-event, which you've helped out massively with in the past, or a lunch and learn as we call them, things like that, where you get away from that feeling of, oh, I've paid €300 and I'm sat here and I'm listening to a sponsored pitch. If you want to come to my session and learn, that's great. If you don't, absolutely fine. I totally understand. And then I think, it's how do you measure success? How many people maybe signed up to receive some more information? And I think it's very interesting going around the events how people are more forthcoming, say in North America, with their emails than they are in Europe. You have to be a little bit more it's just one email. We're not going to spam you. You know, I get all that. We all have far too much email, and it's a very noisy medium as well now. So
totally.
But beyond that, you know, it's just a good opportunity to try and tell people about some of the other initiatives we've got, such as, you know, our webinar series and you know, it's a lot of free resources and things like that. And you know, they're not actually buying a product from us. Everything I do, that the designers and developers, UX people out there, they can sign up for free and have access to it all. So it's not a hard sell, you know. Just try and. But to go back to your point about value and partnerships, I really like that word partnerships. I think if you start thinking of it like that, and not just as kind of a number, and there are, I'll be honest with you, there are people out in the world, you know, that we both live in. They're asking a lot of money, and it's very, very hard to understand where that value is. And as your company grows, that number often rises as well. And I'm sure there are different decks for different companies. And fundamentally, there are people whose events wouldn't happen without this money, and I get that, and that's really great. But also, on the other side, you do need to kind of justify it to the people who are signing off the invoices. And so there is a kind of a trade-off in that respect.
Yeah. You just mentioned that the company is growing. Shopify is growing a lot in the last years. So recently, Kat Hunter, formerly working for Smashing Conference, got on board of Shopify. How did that come? Is it now that she does all your work and you just like feet on table and like drinking coffee or tea? Or
it's good. It's good. You do realize we do have the Skype camera on here, so you can see that's not my setup, Mark, right? That's just around the corner. No, Kat and I actually worked together a number of years ago at a company as at the time was called Cosonified, who ran a series of web design conferences. And she came in, I think she'd not long been out of university and was looking for, I think, covering an office manager role when one of the team was on maternity leave. And she had a bunch of like experience putting on gigs and various other things around Oxford where she was at university. And I was like, we've got this events role. You should apply for this one as well. So she actually put her through 4 interviews and she ended up getting the events role. She would have also been overqualified in a sense for the office manager role, but she ended up being an events manager for that company. And then I think put on a lot of events in the US and UK and stuff. And then when she left that company, she went to Smashing and did kind of probably 20 or so Smashing comps. And we live in the same town still. And I was looking to grow out my team and have someone who would be able to just kind of hit the ground running and help with all the logistics. But also she's quite creative. So you know, a lot of really good with writing and sort of take on some of the ownership of those kind of things. And in turn sort of head up the kind of events and partnership side. So and also I think, you know, Shopify is a very Cat company. A lot of the ways that we work and the things that we do, you know, are good for her. So I put her through another 5 interviews, so 9 in total now. Sorry, Kat.
Oh, wow.
Over the last sort of 6 years. But so she's we've got plans to do more partner focused events, specifically, you know, trying to help our partners succeed with the platform and you know, bringing those kind of articles and webinars that we do kind of into an in-person setting. So some of the speakers and things like that focus on sharing stories. Just obviously helping out when we go to events, as you saw in Reasons, and also come up with you know, crazy ideas. We're in a privileged position now where we've got a bit of room to experiment with some new formats and some new partnerships. And
so that means we're gonna see more events from Shopify itself, and not only like Shopify being part of other events.
I think we're 100% carry on. You know, making inroads into the community. That's very, very important for me. But yeah, I think compared to 3 or 4 years ago, where we were still kind of trying to build the brand awareness for Shopify as a platform, but also the partner program, how we can help designers and developers succeed. I'm meeting more and more people who A, know about us and B, are partners. And it's more a case of, okay, this thing's catching on. You know, I want to learn more. I want to work out how I can specialize, or how do I pitch this project? How can I go from a $3,000 project to a $10,000 project, given that the platform's identical? And there there are many ways that you can do this, and we're very fortunate, I think, in our ecosystem that a lot of the people who are our partners, people who are working with the platform day in, day out, are very willing to share this knowledge. There's people in the States, Ross Bailey from GrowthSpark, he sort of opens the door and is very happy to sort of share numbers and the successes and pitfalls that they've come across and the challenges. And Kurt Elster, who runs the Unofficial Shopify podcast, he kind of shares all this knowledge. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think it's counterintuitive. Why would you give away those business secrets? But we both know that it's one thing having read or listened to that knowledge. It's an entirely different thing putting it all into practice and doing it yourself. So
definitely, yes.
Never be scared of sharing your ideas because for fear of someone stealing them, because most people would never execute on them. It's all about the execution. So I think that's something that's interested me more as I've gotten older as well. The technology is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've both had this conversation, but the way that people are building businesses and building lives and growing companies, whether it be with Shopify or their own endeavors, that's what really interests me now, and company cultures and things like that. So there will be technical content in the events that we do, but I think it'll be more about like how do you do wholesale on Shopify? How do you do subscriptions as opposed to someone live coding a theme? Because there's plenty of resources on that now, and there will be more, of course. But kind of an interesting time in that respect.
It sounds like it, yes. So also interesting for me personally is because I have a family, you have a family. I travel to many events.
It's not the same family, though, is it? Just to be clear to your listeners.
But you're traveling to a lot of events as well. Like, I mean, I know the conversations I have got with my wife always like, when is it like too much? Like, is that one really like an event I have to go to? What is the benefits of going to it, and so forth? So how do you justify all the events? I mean, you can easily say like, yeah, Shopify makes me to go to it, and then, but I guess your wife knows that you do the decisions your own as well sometimes, right? Because you decide when to travel and stuff, right? Or is it like that Shopify really goes like, here, we sent you to event X and then you have to go or whatever?
No, I'm very, very fortunate now. I think having been at the company a few years that they do let me sort of work out my own schedule, which is a privilege, really. In the beginning, it was a kind of scattergun approach. We were out there sort of pounding the beat, as it were, going across to the States quite a bit and Canada and Europe as well. But now I think as the team has grown, we've certainly got, we call them partner managers, people who deal with our kind of regions-based partners. So if you were in New York, you'd have a personal contact in the Ottawa office who would be your direct contact. And so these people like to go out to the events as well. So there's more people on the team, so it's less of a strain on an individual. Mm-hmm. But I if I'm honest, I pick the ones now I want to go to.
Okay, cool.
We can catch up with people, and we you meet new people, you get introductions, and that spurns other collaborations and things like that. And so it's always good to go to these things. But it's I guess it's not a normal existence. A remote worker. I work for a company that's I'm 5 hours ahead of for most of the year. Yeah. But it works very well. I go over quite regularly. We catch up if I'm over in the States at something. People will often come down and we'll convene. But it's I think my kids are just used to it. When I'm at home, I'm very lucky. I can drop them off at school and on occasions pick them up as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what the people at the school gates think I do. Most people think I work for Spotify, which is good, but no free music accounts from me, sadly. But I think it's a very different existence to mine when I was a child. My dad was out the door at 7:00 and was often home at 7, Monday to Friday. My kids are probably fed up of me being in the house when they get back. But there are periods where travel is required. But I have a very understanding partner. I think for the most part, hopefully she'll never hear me say that because.
I mean, it's the same for me. I just said it on stage as well when I gave my talk in Bologna. I mean, having a family, you and doing what we do, I think without an understanding and supporting partner, would never work, right? If your wife would say like, oh no, all that traveling, sorry, that is like way too much, and then you have to stop, or like look for a different partner then. And to be honest, I mean, like depending on what is more worth for you, that's something that we don't discuss here, right? But no, in general, you are absolutely right, and that is something that I discuss with my wife as well, because like sometimes like right now in September it was 2 weeks of traveling more or less for me. Luckily to Bologna, I was able to take Tanya and Mali, the little one, with me. But sometimes it's really the discussion is like, no, you would be more at home if you would have a 9-to-5 job, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't if you take the time like all together, right? Like, and then the benefits also that we have got, like when she says like, can you take care of the kids, and I just go for a run or just go for a quick shopping around in the city or whatever, that all doesn't work, right? If I'm not home. So it's always a balance between things. So I guess you'll have similar conversations at home as well, right? Like sometimes where you go like, oh, is that really necessary that you go from Sunday to next Friday to New York again? And blah.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think I try and keep the trips. I do value the trips and the interactions that result from them. But I do kind of try and keep them short. So I'm notorious for taking a red eye. So if I go over to Canada, I'll go Sunday night and get the red eye Thursday type thing if it's a trip to HQ. But yeah, you have to be considerate, because especially, I mean, my son was born after I went freelance and before I joined Shopify and all the travel starts. So he's kind of known that, daddy goes away. And they normally associate it with, a present being brought back, but there's only so many, Kinder eggs you can buy from an airport that they get excited by. So we kind of stopped that now. But but I think the flip side, Mark, and I think you nailed it there really, is that I'm around so much more than say my father was, or both my parents worked, and I'm just here more, and so I've seen probably a lot more of my kids grow up and have those little interactions. But yeah, I mean, I do, when I'm here, I work a pretty strict sort of 9 to 6 day. Once to drop the kids off, I'll either hang out in a coffee shop in the morning or come back and work at the desk in the house. And I'm a bit like you. I don't think a 9-to-5 office job would really work. I would wager I'd be less productive now, just because I've kind of
of course.
People say, where do you work? And I say, well, I've got my bag, I've got my laptop. That's work, right?
And sometimes
it makes me laugh.
We are really, really fortunate to and privileged to have that situation. That's for sure. But it's like what you say. It is for me the benefit of like hearing my kids playing down in the garden with having a water fight, and I can simply join them for like half an hour and like get completely wet, and like then just get some new clothes on and like continue working, right? Like without like someone complaining about it, because there is no one like who actually is interested in when I work. Just like the outcome of it is important, right?
Yeah, it's when you travel and people say, "What's will you be working when you're here?" And I'm like, well, no, obviously. But so what is work now? It's have a laptop, we'll work. We're not at the industrial age where we go into a factory and make something, are we? Our product is email. Our product is conversations, I guess. But yeah, so I do have a lot of calls, obviously being not in the same country, and there were times when my son was little, he sort of fascinated by the Skype window and would often pop up. So a lot of my colleagues have gotten used to having a little 2-minute conversation with Noah often, but now he's at school, it doesn't happen as often, but they're very understanding.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that and to hear that from you as well. Because like I had a conversation with Bastian Alga. It was a similar situation, working from home, right, with Kirby, an own product that he owns and has to support and stuff. So it's like really interesting for me to see like how other families really get used to the daily routine, which is definitely no routine at all anymore. So really interesting to hear that. Especially as you're not only working for Shopify, where you do a lot of stuff like events. You mentioned the books that you did, the Grow books, right? But you're also doing like stuff next to it, like your podcast, for example, right?
Well,
I mean,
we try.
I mean, like, okay, but still, where do you take all the time from? I mean, I only work 4 days a year, you know that, right? So I have time to do the podcast, right?
Well, I know, but I thought it was 6. Don't put yourself down, Mark.
Okay,
I think it's 6 if you count the workshops. Yeah. It's whenever I point that out to you, it's pure jealousy. You know that, right? Well, no, I mean, I think, the podcast has, it's taken the word hiatus to a new level of meaning. I think we've done about 40 or so episodes, and we've got some, I've done some interviews, as you know, you were one of them kindly, called Backstories, which are just going to be a bit more, chatty. And I think, life often gets in the way of these things, right? I found something with side projects, if you like, when you add the money equation into it, they become less fun in a way.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So when you start thinking of every project or everything that you want to do, it's kind of like when if you were in bands, I know you were in bands as a youngster, so was I, but it's like once you realize that you're probably not going to be on the stage at Wembley or the Olympic Stadium in Berlin, and you actually think, I just enjoy playing music. You just feel very differently about it. And
definitely.
You do it for the pleasure. And I think that was the podcast, really. When we started it, probably 3 or 4 years ago, Kieran and I were, we called it the Back to Front Show, which is kind of a silly pun, but back-end, front-end technology. And we've amassed around 42 or 3 episodes over the years. But it was maybe, that maybe there was something around it we could get out there. People would, we talk about some of the projects we're doing. I don't think we've generated any work from it. One of the byproducts of it has always been people would meet you on the stand or at an event, and they'd recognize. And also because I did a whole bunch of screencasts for Shopify when I started, people recognize your voice and they're sort of looking at you funny, and they can't place you. So I think with audio projects, that's quite funny. They go, "I recognize your voice." But it's also the curse of screencasts is quite funny because we host them on YouTube, and they'd be like, "Oh, you have a really nice voice. You should read storybooks." And then the next one is, "Oh, your voice is awful."
Yeah.
What is that clicking sound you're making? Oh, thumbs down. But yeah, I think the fact is we don't find enough time for it. It's harder. Kieran's got a young son now as well, and he's busy off doing a whole bunch of digital projects in both sort of product things and also with film and things. So yeah, it's considering we both run our own schedules, it's stupidly hard to seem to find an hour a week.
Yeah,
but
if you have a partner like doing that together with, like, I can imagine as like would be even more. I mean, I find it difficult putting an episode out every 2 weeks for me now, where I go like, oh, how should I do that? I mean, but I was thinking for 2 years, like, I want to start a podcast, and then I was thinking like, who's interested in it and what will be the content, and I made way too many thoughts, so I just thought like, fuck it, right? I just start with it and let's see. So, and I think
it's a lovely format, and I remember, I think we have iTunes to thank for the sort of popularity of the podcast.
Oh yeah.
I remember we're going back a long time. A friend of mine who I used to work with when I worked in the NHS National Health Service doing IT things back in the early 2000s, a guy called Paul. And he would do these radio shows, soul music shows. And we got talking. We were always interested in the tech. And I said, Apple have just launched this kind of iTunes thing. You can put out these podcasts. You basically just have to turn your show into an MP3 and you can put it out there. People can download it via your site. And I had a Heart Internet reseller account back in the day. And so I think it was a very early version of WordPress with you could attach an MP3 to it and it put it into the RSS feed as was, and you could add that to iTunes. But I got banned because he had like 300 people download this podcast because it was the only sole podcast in iTunes in the UK. They banned me because I was using up something like 80% of their bandwidth. And I'm phoning them up. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, you've contravened all your terms and conditions. I was like, oh, I had no idea that this would be a thing. And he had a very successful, and he still does it. He moved actually away from just posting the recordings of the radio show that was broadcast to just doing it himself, Paul Collins. And so it always got me thinking. And I just remember some of those early podcasts. And it's just like you'd be walking around with your MP3 player that was 5 times the size of the biggest iPhone now in height and width, and it would barely fit in your pocket. And I just remember this was a really nice medium. And the quality of microphones, the quality against the price came right down, so you could get a really great mic for $100. And people like Dan Benjamin who are sort of forging the way with 5x5, and but it seems to have really kind of gone mainstream, I think, in the last couple of years with like the Gimlet Media stuff and those Serial and things like that. But yeah, I just think it's a really nice format. And for me, the conversational shows are the ones that I enjoy most, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
with the in-jokes and the banter. And I think unashamedly, there's a lot of in-jokes whenever Kieran and I get on the mics, and there's a lot of banter. It's very British. It's very West Country. But people seem to like it. A few hundred people download each show, which still staggers me. But there you go.
Yeah, it's same here. I mean, I think the maximum I ever had was about 650 or 700 ongoing, and that was the
crazy,
first one,
isn't it?
So and now it's it in average is about 450, 500 that listen to my little blah blah blah, which is actually done for me a conversation, right? But I try to get some in meaningful stuff out of it, in terms of maybe something where people go oh, actually, I have the same problems, or I have the same issues, and oh, nice to see that someone thinks like this as well, and stuff like this. So that's important for me. Not really to go I want to teach you how to use Shopify now, and that's why I ask Keir to come on my show, right?
Sure, yeah. So, yeah. No, I think the people are the most interesting thing about the industry. There's amazing design, there's amazing products out there, there's amazing advancements in technology, but the conversations you have, which is why I think we both appreciate and love events so much, is those you bump into someone. They could be someone you've respected for a long time, and you have a really interesting chat. They could be someone who you may never meet again, but you get something from that interaction and a piece of knowledge, and obviously the talks and things like that. But yeah, the ability to sort of eavesdrop on conversations, which podcasts and audio is a very intimate way of doing, I think is probably why it's so successful.
Yeah. So anything that except working for Shopify and your podcast is planned from your side, new projects? Let's call them side projects again, something that we can events or something. Like the Xmas show you did with Elliot back then, that was the only one.
Those were fun. Yeah, the Christmas specials where we kind of had 25 people in a room, and we did a kind of, it wasn't even a table, was it? It was like a round.
Yeah.
And everyone got up and sort of shared something from their year. And it was quite, those, I really enjoyed those. They were fun. They were kind of, I think people got a lot from those. In a way. Do you know what, Mark? I think this, we all have the same, as the cliche goes, number of hours in a day, and I think mine are pretty much accounted for for the most part at the moment. You know what it's like. You have 3 children, I have 2. They're both of school age. They're both.
Yeah.
My weekends aren't my own anymore. Happily not, but with football and street dance classes.
Oh yeah. I know.
Every week a kids party. So I want to write more. I think that's something I've neglected. I write for work, but I've also, I think, I'm very much of the opinion that I'm an okay writer, but I'd like to get better at it. I think it's nice to write on a variety of topics, but I think it would be my ambition if we can get a few more podcasts out by the end of the year. I would be quite happy. My expectations have reduced somewhat in terms of frequency.
Yeah, I mean, looking forward to this. Always enjoy listening to the podcast.
So, thank you, too kind.
I mean, for that, I think we are pretty much done by here, because all my questions I've written down in my little book, which is my brain replacement, are answered. And I really enjoyed the little conversation we had. And I think we're gonna meet in Barcelona again. Will you be there?
Yes.
In Barcelona,
yeah.
And then in Berlin as well, right? So we meet
for your event, of course. Yes.
Oh yeah. So you see, within the next couple of months, we meet twice. Fantastic.
I know. I think I see. And it's so rare we ever meet in mutual turf. I mean, obviously you came to Bristol for Conf this year, and which is just down the road from me, and we convene in May. But I was sick this year, so I didn't really get the most from Beyond Tellerrand.
Sadly,
But yes, looking forward to both of those, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on the show.
Fantastic. Thanks, Keir.
Pleasure. See you soon. Bye.